Hello and welcome to Chats, the television podcast, season 13, part 6, Chatsirless. This is the 6th series in our season on shows misfortunate enough to be canceled before airing their 13th episode, which we have been calling 13 Under 13. My name is Alan, and I'm joined by the new manager at this weird superhero insurance agency called Life. It's Magellan.
Hey, so that's gonna be a damage insurance.
Yeah, that's gonna be.
This is coming from a
built.
29-year-old who doesn't know a lot about insurance.
From based in Charm City, literally right outside of Gotham.
Literally right inside of my house. Hey, Charm City, wink.
Oh, he is charming, everyone. Can you tell? Anyways, hi. How are you, Majel?
I'm okay. How are you?
You're living in a Zelda hole. I'm living in a Zelda hole.
Yeah, I'm living in a Zelda hole. Big time.
Like,
it's deep.
Literally, it's a game full of deep holes and big caverns. So I love that about it. Yeah, we're back with 13 Under 13. For those who don't know, Chats, our TV show book club where we watch shows like a book club. We've been doing 13 Under 13. Like I said earlier, right now these are shows that aired no more than 13 episodes before getting canceled. So we're talking about the shows episode by episode and why and how they got canceled. We're talking about Powerless this month. And we enlisted some help to talk about this pilot because it's a weird one, y'all. It's Ryan and Bartek from the Spittin' Polish podcast. Hello, gentlemen.
Hi, Alan. It's Mommy.
Hi, Alan. It's Mommy here.
No!
How are you doing?
Ben
Yes.
Queen, no!
Where are you? Look, Alan. I'm holding the phone up right into your ear. Please
Okay.
tell us how great you loved Powerless was. On the scale of greatness, was it meh or great? But no, in all seriousness, I'm Ryan, and that over there is my fellow co-host, Bartek. How are you doing, Bartek?
I'm that, and I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. I'm getting to talk about a cancelled television show by Ben Queen again. Ben Queen's back. And you're here too. We were here last time for a cancelled Ben Queen show called Drive. And now we're back for his last show. This is his last.
Oh, wow.
He's
Yep.
done nothing but cancelled shows and then occasionally write for Pixar. And that's it. That's it. They stopped him here. They said, no more. Okay? You need a decade or so off. And
Thankfully, his
working
most
too
recent
hard.
credit was on The Addams Family 2, which I heard was pretty decent for what it was. And he was a co-writer on that film. But otherwise, yeah, this is the last TV show in what we've been calling the Ben Queeniverse. He's a showrunner who's, as Ryan said, made a bunch of shows that got canceled, like Drive and like A to Z, both of which we covered on Chats, 13 Under 13. So,
which did
welcome.
not make it to Z, that show.
No.
That show, every episode
No.
was A, B, C. Didn't even make it.
Mm.
And
Didn't make
it's interesting that we're talking about Ben Queen, and also we came off of A to Z a few months ago, because this show Powerless has a couple of similarities to A to Z, mainly in its kind of structure and vibe, I would say. But I want to start by introducing the show as a concept. This is Powerless. This is a 12-episode canceled series that takes place officially in the DC Comics universe, starring Vanessa Hudgens, Alan Tudyk, Christina Kirk, Ron Funches, and Danny Pudi as the staff of an insurance company specializing in products to protect defenseless bystanders from the collateral damage of superheroes and supervillains. Right out the gate, kind of a fun premise. You know, I enjoy the concept of a superhero insurance agency, and I was excited to see how they would render that in a television format. But in discussing that, I think we should get right into this pilot. We have Ryan and Bartek on to discuss episode 1 of Powerless. So we're going to be talking about the first 3 tonight, but first up is Win or Lose. Now, this is the Powerless pilot, episode 1. It was written by Justin Halpern and Patrick Schumacher. It was directed by Mark Buckland, and it aired February 2nd, 2017, only 6 years ago. Magellan, can you tell me what happened in Win or Lose?
In this episode, Emily begins her first day and quickly learns that her expectations far exceed those of her new boss, Van Wayne, and her coworkers. To put it another way, this is it's Parks and Rec. You ever seen it?
Yeah, Parks and Rec, The Office,
Yeah.
A to Z, smush it all together and put superheroes in there.
But I mean specifically, it's like the Emily character is very much like a Leslie Knope
Leslie
type. We're gonna do this, and it's gonna be great, kind of a thing.
The power of earnestness and hard work.
Yeah. Also, we should just, before we slander Ben Queen too much in this episode, we should be clear about the fact that it's my understanding that he departed from this project before it went into production.
No kidding.
Yeah, so he was involved with
I had no clue about that. I thought because his name is all over it.
I heard the word departed.
No,
I'm like,
it
oh my
is.
god.
Yeah.
He's credited as the creator, and on IMDb for every episode, he's credited as developing it for TV. But there's articles from like August 2016 that talk about him departing
did he
the
get
show.
cancelled from the show itself before he could actually write an episode? Did they say, "Hey, man, we're not even letting you make one"?
Oh no!
They saw a storyboard that he drew of like a baby and a phone, and they said nope.
Oh, God.
He really wanted Vanessa Hudgens to put a phone up against a baby's face, and they said, "No, Ben, you're not allowed to do that. We're sorry, you can't. You can't keep getting away with casting Firefly actors. You can't keep doing this.
It's illegal, Ben. It's illegal. Chats, we like to make things easy to, like, accessible. If you jump into a random season, you're like, I want to hear them discuss Powerless, but we're referring to the first episode of Drive, the previous Ben Queen show. So this is in a way.
I didn't even remember that reference, so thank you.
How could you
the
forget?
baby on the phone.
How could you forget? That was the second episode of Drive, and it was the greatest moment of the entire series.
Right,
How
right,
could you
okay.
forget?
We gave you the thumbnail,
We gave you the clues.
You did.
Mr.
Okay.
Chats.
Powerless. I want overall takes. Let me point. I'm like a class teacher right now. I have to wrangle these goblins.
Yeah,
into shape.
point at everybody one at a time.
I want Bartek first. Give me your quick
Yeah.
take. How did you feel about the Powerless pilot?
Didn't like it.
Oh,
Okay, next up, Ryan Slowinski. Give me your take on the Powerless pilot.
I thought it was okay. I've seen this before. I think that's the thing to point out. I don't know if anyone else has seen it or has been familiar with this show.
God no.
Propositioned the show by happenstance. You guys were calling for, hey, let's do a new 13 under 13. What are some shows? And I very much have been campaigning that you should do shows that are good, like shows that people genuinely miss and wish continued on. And I listed a bunch, and all of them got ignored. And then I offhandedly said, I'm surprised no one has mentioned this show because your community and you guys, talking about Community, are big fans of the television series Community. And this was the show that the guy who played Abed did right after that. I thought, I'm surprised nobody's mentioned this. I didn't say it as in, this is one of the good ones that we should be doing. And then it became a thing of, no, Ben Queen created, so we should do it. But I have seen this before, and overall, for a pilot episode of a comedy show, this is fine. It's functional. It has mistakes in it that I can't wait to talk about, or things that you could easily shift into a different direction and attitude, and it would make the series better. What I'm saying is, I think this has the bones of something worthy of being made into an ongoing series, but it just misses it slightly. And so overall, having to revisit this, I had a bit of a nostalgia, a bit of a fondness. Heck, even another member of the chat's community, Pat, he's a big fan of Powerless as well, and I was talking to him about it the other week, and we were both just gabbing about it, being like, remember that? Like, it's not a show that I necessarily would say to everyone, you must go watch it, but I enjoyed it when it came out as just a thing you put on in the background, something that you have on when you're making dinner, and that has a place as well.
I was thinking, like, where was I, by the way, like when this show came out, because it's not that long, 6 years ago. We're doing chats. We're in the middle of Freaks Chats, I believe. And so I don't know why this completely flew under my radar. I guess I wasn't watching a ton of cable at the time. The premise is good, though, Ryan. You make a good point. Like, this is superhero insurance agency. The plot lines are literally based on Batman storylines that they just, like, what would the theme song, which talk about quickly, just like the intro, and then John, I want to hear your takes. Is this like really creative, sort of like newly drawn comic book panels of classic DC superhero moments, but we zoom in the background and there's a bystander, and it's Vanessa Hudgens, it's Alan Tudyk, it's Ron Funches, and they were there all along, because that's sort of what the show is. It's like what happens behind the scenes of all these big DC moments.
It sells
Um,
a version of the show that I want to see more of.
Yeah.
I wrote down the opening credits sells a really good show and or a good premise of here are these iconic superhero moments, but in those are the background people, the extras, the things that fill out the space. What happens if we zoomed in on them and what it's like to be a citizen of something greater, something more absurd? And we've seen so many pieces of media try and do this meta deconstructionist thing on superheroes and fall on their face or succeed. But this is an angle to it, especially when you just show me those opening credits and say, tell me what you think this show is about. It gives me
Yeah.
so much rich material that I'm just salivating at the idea because it's something I haven't necessarily seen in this function before of we have a superhero world, but we're focusing on the day-to-day people who just have to live through it, and maybe even they inadvertently work for the big hero of the day.
Yeah, the music really complements it in the opening credits. Like, you've got like the full shot of like the superhero doing something, person in the background, zoom in, person in the background, and the music becomes a bit more whimsical. Then you cut to the next one, music's back to intense, zoom in on person background, whimsical. It really kind of sold its premise right there.
Yep. We should definitely talk about the music in a little bit, but just for the sake of this segment, Magellan, tell me, as a superhero fan, as a sort of like lapsed but still a present DC Comics fan, what did you feel about Powerless coming into it?
I think Ryan hit it on the head that this is a perfectly serviceable pilot that makes me wonder if there's more of this. And I think we're right to point to the theme song as kind of representative of what functions best about this pilot, like the scenes where Vanessa Hudgens' character is like doing the dishes and there's a giant starfish out the window and it explodes all over her window or whatever. It's like that's fun. Sure, I'll watch a show of that vibe. Or like the supervillain is giving an address to the city and it's on everybody's computers and everybody's like, fuck, can I just go back to playing Minesweeper? Like, why is this happening right now? Like, I'm down for that kind of tongue-in-cheek, irreverent sort of thing. I think that said, you could just go watch Better Off Ted, or like you could just go watch Parks and Rec, or there are other shows that like don't do the superhero part of this, but do this tone of office comedy. Either like the kind of sci-fi office comedy thing in Better Off Ted, or the sort of like, yeah, we're going to like go get it. And there's a wacky cast of people who don't quite fit together, but we're going to make it happen. And there are shows that just do those things in more interesting ways. And so I think because of that, for me, this was really living or dying on if I was buying into the premise part of it, which I think in the pilot is showcased fine,
Yeah.
And I wish there was more. I think there's promise of like a really great ensemble here, because I was telling one of my friends at work about it. I was like, hey, stop me if you've ever heard of this show that has Vanessa Hudgens, Alan Tudyk, Ron Funches, Danny Pudi, Christina Kirk. Like, whoa, hold on.
Adam West.
I need to watch that now.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. Like, that's kind of a dream team starting five for a sitcom. And I think they do the best with the material that they have. And it didn't quite live up for me to the promise of what that ensemble could be. But it was fun. It was entertaining. And I would watch a whole show that's as good as this pilot.
Okay, it's interesting. One of the selling statements is that this is an official DC property, and none of the characters within the story are DC characters. These are fictional, like these are made up for the show. But the villains,
except for Van.
And Van, I guess. But all of the heroes and villains of this world do exist. Like the big starfish thing recently was in The Suicide Squad as the villain of that movie. And he was the first major villain that the Justice League ever fought, I do believe. But it also says it's the first ever DC sitcom, which is a damning statement to make because it isn't true. it has Adam West narrate a moment of the pilot, and he was in arguably the greatest DC comedy show of all time, Batman from 1966. Like, the original Batman is hilarious. It's really well written. It's really well performed. Even in its pilot episode, it does all of these things really well. And so for this show to come in and say, we're the first DC sitcom, I think that's a slap in the face already to anyone who has a history, like knows the history of television for a start. But it's also weird considering that they know the Adam West show exists, hence they bring him in. And I'm going to say it in all honesty, I think Vanessa Hudgens and what's the name of the actress who plays the secretary again?
Christina Kirk.
They're the two who understand how to play the comedy in this show.
Yes.
They're the two who know the best because they're not playing it like a comedy. That's why the greatest things about the Adam West Batman show is the majority of the time, the cast don't play it up for yucks and laughs. They're playing it with absolute sincerity, hence the absurdity comes in. The villains can be over the top and crazy, but Adam West has to be the pillar of virtue, and he does that in the most hilariously straight-faced ways. And I think Vanessa Hudgens very much is in line with that. She has her own weird delivery of lines, she has her own weird cadence, but she is tapping into something I want the show to be more of. And yet, when you walk into it, you aren't thinking, Magellan listed the cast earlier, she's the one that stands out because she's not traditionally a comedy actress. She's not traditionally a sitcom person. Yet, that is a benefit to her here. She doesn't play it up like I'm in a wacky comedy, ha ha ha, I'm yelling my lines. She has line deliveries that are just so off the beaten path because they are played so straight. And I really admired what she was doing here because it made me think of The Tick, which is another great example of a superhero comedy show where Patrick Warburton's a silly character evoking Adam West, but everyone else is playing it very sincere, even though one of the characters is called Batman Well. And so I look at Powerless's pilot and I go, you have the bones of something here, you have the essence of things. Not everyone is on the same page, but when you are entering into a first episode of a show, especially of a comedy show, I think that's okay. I think you can give that a pass. I mean, it took Parks and Rec 2 to 3 seasons to get good. People forget that. People forget that
it's a bad first season at least.
Yeah, Chris Pratt's an asshole in the first 2 seasons for no reason, and then they realize he should be a likable guy. Like, it takes a while for these shows to, especially sitcoms, you look at it and go, okay, is it making me laugh? And if it isn't, you're very harsh and go, well, then it's not worth it. And to me, this made me not laugh a lot, but it made me just have a polite toot out of the nose, a little, that was nice. And that's it. And that's not enough for most people. Especially if you're saying, oh, by the way, this is a DC thing, where it also lays on the jokes come from, hey, that's a comic book reference. You need more than that.
Yeah, I want to, I think the best way for us to like succinctly tackle this pilot, the plot is not very complicated. It is mostly a character introduction episode, so I think it's better if we just go down the cast and talk about some moments or thoughts we have about the cast, because as a sitcom it lives and dies by its cast. Am I right? So, you know, plot wise, this is a failing company. Vanessa Hudgens is hired on right as they seem to be going down. She's like the fourth of whatever how many bosses they've had in the past year, because they all die or quit. And she helps them come up with a piece of technology that has Alan Tudyk, instead of getting failing upwards into Gotham, staying with them here in Charm City, working for this Wayne subsidiary, basically. And the show has an interesting relationship to Bruce, which is funny considering we just finished covering Birds of Prey also, which also has a really specific, similar relationship to Bruce Wayne. But our cast starts with the Vanessa Hudgens cinematic universe herself, Emily Locke. Ryan, can you explain the VHCU to people, please?
No, I am obsessed with Vanessa Hudgens.
I know.
Bartek is deeply familiar with this because we've covered a couple of her movies on our podcast.
Yeah.
Thunderbirds and Band Slam.
Thunderbirds.
She plays
that's
Tintin, a
movie.
character of unknown ethnicity, but definitely not white.
I remember-
is the thing that they make an emphasis on. It's like, she's some
Yeah.
island girl. We don't know where she's from.
I think I had to reveal to you in the episode that that's Vanessa Hudgens because you didn't recognize her.
But Vanessa Hudgens, I did not grow up with cable or Disney Channel or anything, so I did not know. I only looked up now. I'm like, oh, she's from the High School Musicals. That's where she came from.
Okay.
What
Huh?
I deeply am...
What's your connection to her then?
I watched as an adult. Well, I watched Thunderbirds as a kid. I love that movie. But she's just like a girl in it, like she wasn't anything big. And then as I've grown up, she's also grown up and been in stuff like Powerless, where I see her and I don't have any deep associations, or Spring Breakers. I love Spring Breakers. And
Really good movie.
She's great in that. And the appeal of that movie is what happens if we get these young, gorgeous Disney Channel girls and make them wild and crazy. But so I know her through this.
You're a fan of the Princess Switch.
Yes. So the
1, 2, and
cinematic
3.
universe of Vanessa Hudgens is she has a deal with Netflix where she puts out movies every year, 1 or 2 movies every year. And it's slowly becoming obvious that they're all interconnected. There are moments where she plays a princess character, and then in another movie that she's also in, that country that the princess is from exists in that world, even though it's a fictional country.
Right.
And then in another movie, one of the characters is watching one of the Vanessa Hudgens Christmas movies, and she's watching that movie with herself on the TV, and they never acknowledge it. And it's become this secret little dark corner of media where Vanessa Hudgens has signed up a deal where she's going to make these boring-ass Christmas movies, but slowly over time, they're making them interconnected, and she's getting more power to be crazy with it. So in one of these movies, she plays like two girls, like identical twins. It's the Parent Trap. Oh, they're separated, and then they meet up, and then they switch around, and one's a princess, one's a baker or something. And then in one of the movies, they reveal, no, there's a third one, actually, who's an evil blonde-haired version who has an evil accent who loves stealing jewels. and obviously they swap appearances, and you have to see the evil Vanessa Hudgens try to be the good one, and she does all of this crazy stuff. And I think the conception of Vanessa Hudgens as an actress, as a person, she's horrible, but as an actress, it is very much, oh, she's the Disney Channel, she's High School Musical. Like even Magellan's like, well, what's your connection? I'm like, well, oddly enough, my connection is I've seen her through the prism of her work as an adult. So I have no real grasp on her kidsy beginning that many of those actors are held accountable to for the rest of their careers.
Yeah.
So I look at her here in this pilot, and I'm just laughing at the fact that she gets it. The fact that the actress who isn't known for doing comedy, the one who is primarily known for being a child star, she walks in here and she just gets the material like barely anyone else did. Alan Tudyk is a respected actor who's done comedy for most of his career. He's from Juilliard, and I walk out of this episode going, he had no fucking clue what he was doing. I don't like, if you told me this guy's never done comedy before,
disagree.
If you told me this guy's never had a career in comedy acting, I would believe
Dear
you.
Lord, Ryan. Come on now.
I thought he was terrible. I thought he was legitimately terrible.
No. The writing is like silly 2017,
no.
LOL, OMG, the writing
he
is not
told-
great.
Now, here's the difference. Now, I don't want to take up the whole space, but I only touch this, and then we'll move on to Bartek and Vanessa Hudgens. But he falls into the biggest mistake that American comedy actors fall into, which is, oh, you know what's funny? Shouting. If I just shout and grunt and squeal, that means it's funny. Ryan Reynolds does it all the time. Zac Efron does it all the time. Seth Rogen. I could list you some of these great comedy actors. They all think, oh, if I just scream out a line, it's really funny. And I find that so fucking tiresome in American comedy specifically. It's just a crutch, and he fell on it for 90% of his lines. Now, Bartek, I've gone on a bit of a tirade in a rant because I didn't expect pushback on Alan Tudyk, but I should have, because these guys, of course, love him. They worship the ground he walks on. But what did you think
Of course we do. Oh my God. Go ahead.
I think Magellan has something to say.
Alan?
No. I want to hear
it's
what Bartek
fine.
has to say about Vanessa Hudgens. That sounds like a fun time.
Me too.
I will fight them.
Evidently, Ryan, you were getting very heated, and I'm in the room with you, so I could tell. Someone mentioned earlier that Vanessa Hudgens and the secretary were the ones who were, that was you, Ryan, laying the comedy on the best. I agree as well. Their scene on the balcony where one of them shows them, like, this is what I used to look like. She got the shirt that says free hugs. That was sort of the comedy that I was into. But like I said earlier, and I said it kind of jokingly and dismissively that I didn't like the episode. I didn't, but I understand that this is only a first episode, and I imagine it can only go up from here. But having only seen the first episode, the comedy in this was absolutely not my cup of tea. The premise, I fully agree, was interesting. I was interested to check it out. It has a fine enough plot for a first episode. We've got problem, solution introduced, getting it pitched, and establishing the show from there on. But yeah, it was the comedy that I couldn't stomach for this one. Like, when at the very beginning, when we had the train scene, it was fine there because these were throwaway citizen characters. They were written a little bit more one note, dismissive to get the point across that, like, this is a universe, or a city rather, where this is a normal thing. People will just continue reading their newspapers, playing their games or whatever.
They're disillusioned about superheroes and their shenanigans.
She's
Disillusioned.
just normal. She's just a normal, earnest girl who's excited about everything, and it's her first day on the job, and everyone's like, "Shut up! It's a daily thing for us. Don't be enthusiastic."
Yeah, it establishes the city. It establishes our main character, how she's a fish out of water here. We get her backstory about how she's got the florist father who pushed her to go for her dreams.
Sure.
But then once she gets to the office, the characters that we meet there for the most part kind of fall not to the extreme of the one-dimensional that we saw on the train, but pretty close there. Everyone has a level of dickishness that I just couldn't buy into.
I thought they were inconsistent as well. We go from one moment where they hate her to the next moment where they fear her to the next moment where they're apathetic, and they all treat it like it's the same thing. It was very strange when they had that moment. It's like, oh, look, I don't think they want to play with you. And she turns over and they're like literally cowering in fear, hiding behind things. Yet the scene earlier, they were right up in her face telling her to go fuck herself, basically. And it's like, if you're going to what you say, Bartek, like terms of like identifiable character traits, even in that regard of like having the most shallow, like, oh, they hate her, at least make it consistent throughout the pilot.
There's a thing that I have where, and maybe this is a common thing, I'm not all that special for saying it, but if I find the progression of something to be a bit too predictable, I kind of don't enjoy it as much. And this was a case where, with like the three, I was going to call them friends, but that's
office workers.
The three office workers, the people that she's meant to be the boss of, it was like every single time she said something, a little alarm went off in my head. It's like, now they're going to have a comeback of some sort. Whether it's the woman who,
makes a device that hates her.
Just hates her immediately, or the other two which have like a back and forth sassiness. It's like, is that a product? No, that's not a product. That kind of thing. When we eventually get to the point where she's proposing the new device and then they're going to sell it, when they didn't then have a snappy comeback, that kind of broke the chain there. But it also felt kind of like, well...
it went into the narrative of now they see her genius
and
they respect her. Mm-hmm. You even had the double take at the end when the news reports saying, like, Batman used this device, and those two characters look at each other like, what?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Right. It's a little over the top. I think it's weird because the visuals of the show indicate that it's going to be silly and over the top. Like, it's very colorful, which is something I like. Right. It reminds me of a comic book at times. I'm like, oh, I like you were saying earlier, Ryan, this is a show I want to look at in the background. I don't need to like pay attention to the plot because their office is full of like little Easter eggs and it's cool and they're dressed well and everybody's like good looking. But they're just so mean to each other. Everybody is, especially towards Emily.
Yeah, and there's just this like, I don't know. There's just a stretch of time in American television where everything is like the same kind of office comedy, and you just have like ways that office comedy characters talk to each other. And this feels like the show feels like a post Parks and Rec show, like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or something, where it's like, let's try it now with cops and see if that works.
Or the good place. Let's try it now, but they're in the afterlife.
I haven't
Right.
seen
Yeah.
The
any
Good
of
Place
the
is
above
good,
that you guys
which
just talked
is-
about, but this still felt
Mhm.
overly familiar to like the few maybe Marvel movies that I've seen.
It feels
Or when I saw
yeah.
the 2015 Star Wars film, and there was these like little
Quippy.
quippy
Little quippy,
comebacks, and it's like,
little
quippy.
what's
Right,
going on
right.
here?
Not Quibi.
Yeah.
Not
Although
Quippy.
Powerless totally
You got a
seems like a
boyfriend?
show
Your
that would
boyfriend?
have been on Quibi.
But yeah, this definitely is like a late 2010s, like everything's ironic and so nothing is kind of thing. And I totally agree that the like Office characters are super bland, and it bummed me out because I really like Danny Pudi. I mean, at least what I've seen of him in Community, and he's not given anything to work with here, and so sometimes he does things and delivers them in a way where it's like, wait, that's kind of like an Abed delivery, but now you're kind of not doing that. And I just couldn't quite figure out where that character was. And then Ron Funches, you're giving the guy lines like, "Ooh, Kitty got claws" or whatever, and it's like, what the hell are you doing?
That gave
Why?
me psychic damage.
It's just like, so yeah, that bummed me out because I think there's a lot of promise in this group of actors to do things that are a little more tactical with like the way that they're delivering certain things. We've seen I've seen Ron Funches do. I've always seen Ron Funches do things with like a bit of distance and ironic detachment, but in like a more interesting way than this. And I've definitely seen Danny Pudi do things that are more interesting than this. I just don't think like it feels almost obligatory that they're in an office. Like it feels like, well, you know, we're going to do another one of these, but here's the way that we're going to make it different.
What did you think
Yeah.
of our lead, though, of Vanessa Hudgens? Are you on the similar page to?
Oh, I
to
thought
where we
she
are?
was. I thought she was great. I enjoyed. I think it's like a little hard for me to suspend my disbelief and be like, oh, that's a character and that's not Vanessa Hudgens. But it kind of worked for me a little bit because part of what's fun about this show, I think, is that, like, done well, you're not going to be totally immersed in the show because the point is that the premise is somewhat meta, and the fun of her character is that she's almost this like self-parody of like a musical theater character of like, look at me, New York, here I am, like I'm gonna take this city by storm. And the way that they were blocking her throughout the episode, she kept like doing 180-degree turns to camera with big facial expression changes.
Hands on the
And I
hips,
loved it every single
smiling,
time.
yeah. She's
very good at that move.
Mixture of
So
the
that was
theater
fun.
kid we know her to be in real life and self-help business mind guru type that you would see on YouTube or TikTok that's trying to tell you how to manage your schedule.
100%.
I love that aspect of her, that she's reading self-help books and it's like annoyingly parodying them.
It's also such a smart, like probably my favorite joke concept, not my favorite joke, but my favorite like humorous concept in the episode is that Bruce Wayne has written one of those like, you know, Think and Grow Rich, like billionaire self-help books, because of fucking course he would, because he's Bruce Wayne and he's a rich dude and he's a dick probably. And like, yeah, he wrote a book that's like, if you just think hard enough and never give up, you're going to be as rich as me. And I love that exists in this world. I was a big fan of that.
See, I didn't even notice that detail of it, but it's great when you bring it up like that. I agree, because this has to also do that thing of like, we're referencing comic books and superhero tropes and ideas. And one of the things that I thought was really kind of a great underpinning of the series delivered in this episode is she comes in with this plucky optimism that I can take on the world. She has that real golly gee attitude that you associate with someone like in the Superman comics, right? Like her dad is literally played by the actor who played Jimmy Olsen in the Superman movies. Like that's not by accident. And so to take that type of character and say, what happens if we throw you into the meat grinder that is corporate America? And say, you make no difference, you make no change. Even Bruce Wayne, who we, the audience, know as Batman, even he is just another shill. Even he's just another shitty corporate guy who's making text messages about, stop stealing my passwords to this. Like, he's just another drone in the machine that is this world. And so what does that do to our main character? How does that affect her?
Yeah, good luck keeping up the Pollyanna act.
Yeah, exactly.
So it sounds. Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I'm curious to hear what you think of the cast here, Alan, because I imagine you and Magellan will have an affinity towards a large portion of this cast, more than, say, Bartek and I do. So I'm really keen to hear what you think of them.
Not necessarily. I think I generally like Vanessa Hudgens and things, especially when they cast her as this like overly earnest theater type, as opposed to like trying to cast her dark and fucked up. Although Spring Breakers is wonderful because it's doing that. I think she's fine. She just isn't given much like comedy. She's very much the straight woman in this. I think that Teddy and Ron are like funny, but in the wrong show. Like they are in an office comedy that has nothing to do with living in a superhero world, it seems like. I like how put upon they are and how much they want to clearly quit, but they're just kind of stuck in that, like, these are the IT characters, or, you know, Hong Chau's character in A to Z. They're like that type of vibe. So I think that they're fine, but like Danny Pudi occasionally sips into like Abed-isms in this in ways that I'm like, you guys got to let this guy, he has a lot of range. Like I've heard him on DuckTales. Like he can do different types of characters. Like let him be bigger than this. And maybe that's not his specialty.
I hope so too, because in all honesty, anytime I've seen him outside of Community, he does Abed. And so I haven't seen that range. I haven't listened to DuckTales. So when I saw him in this, I'm just like, yeah, of course, he just came off Community. So of course he's doing what he always does. Because let's be realistic, a lot of actors, especially in comedies, they find their thing, and they just keep doing it. They just keep plowing
and that's fine.
forward.
Like, I think Christina Kirk, despite being an assistant and not a boss in this show, like she was in A to Z, is still like the same type of person, like sardonic, a little bit dry, dark humor. Like she could be Aubrey Plaza in another universe, you know? Like this character of Jackie is like totally fine. And I think gets more to do in episodes 2 and 3 comedically and character-wise, but she's totally fine in this, inoffensive.
She was the anchor for me in this episode, because she talked to Vanessa Hudgens like with a surly attitude, but still like a person. Every other character talked about each other in comedy ways, and you actually said something that I found very striking. I had this as my biggest critique, which is, and I've already touched upon it, playing it like it's a comedy versus actually being funny. The reason why I really found Vanessa Hudgens' character to be the funniest is maybe because she isn't given the wacky, funny one-liners, but as that straight person persona, she got the biggest laughs out of me because she's reacting in a way that I understand to these more absurd characters. I mean, Magellan, I gave you some sound clips. Could you just play for me, if you can, the working on a box audio clip? I think that's a kind of an example that captures this and her Adam West straight person-like delivery.
Let's be better. And do you know how we'll do that?
Oh, let me guess, by thinking outside the box.
I want us to forget the box ever existed. Ron, what are you working on?
Literally a box.
Ron, I did not know that.
I love that line delivery. Ron,
pretty good moment.
I did not know that.
It's
straight-laced, and so to me, it was the stuff I gravitated towards, hence her relationship with the bosses, the big, wonderful, over-the-top bosses' secretary. I found that to be the real meat of the show. I want more of that, of these two characters who are witnessing and being a part of this ongoing absurdity that is living in a superhero world, but one of them's more cynical and one of them's more optimistic. That was far more enjoyable to me than literally any of the lines coming from those office drones. Even in that clip there, I can't remember the character's name. I can't remember if it's Wendy or Susie. I can't remember, but the one who hates Vanessa Hudgens. Even her line delivery of thinking outside the box is delivered in this real, I gotta make it. I gotta put a bit of, I gotta put a bit of mustard on this to make it funny. And it's inherently unfunny to me because all I see is these people straining to gain laughs when realistically, in a sitcom like this, that's not how you do it, because there's two types of sitcoms you can do here, right? The one that's nothing but gags, nothing but gag after gag after gag. Something like a Just Shoot Me, or a Less Than Perfect, or a Frasier, or a Cheers, We could go on, right? Where they're all about those zingers, zingers, zingers. And then you have something more like this, where it falls in line with so many modern sitcoms, but even other types of comedy shows where it's not necessarily about getting to the next punchline. It's not necessarily about getting to the next wacky scenario. It's about throwing in the occasional funny thing, and maybe the situation they're in overall is inherently absurd, but they're not so hand-wringing about trying to make you laugh every second. What do you think, Bartek?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So I was like, Bartek's like, I want to say something. I'm like, what is it, Bartek?
I didn't really, but no, I agree with that. And I think you said it earlier, Ryan, if the show maybe could have some sort of unified style of comedy where everything synergizes, maybe then it would have been highlighted more. Like, we've, doing this episode now, we've talked so much about Vanessa Hudgens and how much she's worked for everyone here. Because I was kind of, a bit of a downer about it after I finished watching it, it was only really at that balcony scene towards the end where I actually saw, okay, maybe there is actually something here. Like, the secretary character was at that balcony scene where I realized, okay, we've got something here. Maybe I, could rewatch her earlier scenes, and there is a bit of a dynamic there, and there absolutely is. The cynic versus the optimist. Maybe we could have something like that more so with the office drone characters where, yeah, they are constantly going for the laughs, and a lot of their, lines are kind of in like put down territory where it's like shooting down. If we're talking in improvisation terms, like shooting down the offers that Vanessa Hudgens gives them. Like, again, I'm not here to try to suggest fixes to the show, but, maybe have them be a bit more enthusiastic or, defeated about the fact that, they've had so many bosses and nothing's working. So they just go with the flow about everything, and maybe it leads to, I don't know, misunderstandings. And, maybe you could have lines where they respond to what Vanessa Hudgens says, which, maybe misses her point, and that leads to comedy. Like, I don't know, any of that would just be better than, the predictable shoot down, shoot down, shoot down.
I know, I've got to ask you this question since you had the biggest negative reaction. Could you tell me why those are 3 characters and not just one? Because I could not tell you what differentiates them other than the physical actors that they hired. They all react and say the same style of comedy beats. There's nothing that identifies them. We mentioned all these shows like The Office, great example, British and American. Jim, or Tim in the British one, is very different to the boss. He's very different to, say, Dwight or this person or this person. I can pinpoint who these people are in the office environment. In this show, I have no clue. I've never worked with anyone like this. These are just boilerplate level of, these are people that work in an office. Where's the go-getter? Where's the office gossip? Where's the one who is here just for a paycheck? Where's the one who's actually like somebody who believes that the company will succeed and keep going? Like, where are any of these great character types that you see in these office place environments? Office Space, the movie. Great example where everyone is playing these wacky comedy versions of characters, yet it all feels relatable because I know inherently who Gary Cole is supposed to be in that movie. When he sidles up and says, yeah, I'm going to need you to do this, I know what that is. I can identify it, even though he's playing it so absurdly. I know what it is based in my reality. Here, I couldn't tell you why these were 3 characters and not just one person who's got to stick up their butt against the new boss. Couldn't tell you. Could you?
The best that I could say is on a, seeing the pieces level, the 2 male office drones exist as a comedy duo where their lines feed into each other for one effect, and that's the best I can do.
Yeah, that's the best I could do as well. What do you guys think?
I think we should move forward into closing thoughts, because we have a lot of thoughts about how this show does comedy and the value of an office space as like a comedic space, right? As a sitcom. I think that those things get fleshed out and improved a lot in subsequent episodes. I agree though, Ryan. Like I myself currently work in an office, and I've often had people, and I tell them stories, be like, your office sounds like you're in a sitcom. Because I have lots of characters like this, people who don't like their job, or people who, are weirdly invested in like weird politics and drama. And it's all very funny and silly. And I think that Powerless occasionally taps into that, and I just wish it was either that or about working in a world where there are superheroes. And it tries us with the difference and it fails. But I would like some closing specific notes or lines or thoughts from each of my hosts here before we take it to the close, because we've been going for quite a while on this pilot.
Well, it's because this pilot embodies to me why the show failed. I don't need to see any more episodes to understand why it failed. I have seen more episodes. I know it does get better. I know it does find its feet.
Oh, good.
But at the same
not dramatically so. It's just kind of this.
At the same time, still what it is this good enough to be more than a movie? This premise, is this good enough to be an ongoing show? Could you tell me why this should go for more than 13 episodes? If this was a British show, this would be 8 episodes and that would be it, and we would all call it a beloved darling. And
cult classic, love it, yeah.
Yeah,
yep.
Spaced didn't need to go for more than 16 episodes,
right.
Okay? And that had way more verve and creative skill. I mean, the music. That's another thing we haven't talked about. The fucking music.
Okay,
it would
just
not
quick.
Shut up. The music never is off. It's always telling you what's funny, which is the worst type of comedy, is when the music and the actors and everything's telling you this is funny. It doesn't work. Did I kill the other?
Yeah, I'm dead. The music's pretty rough. It's way too loud. What's up, Ryan?
I'm sorry, I didn't expect my harsh music critiques to kill everyone in the record. I'm like, did it not bother you?
To be honest, I don't really remember.
I mean,
it bothered me. It was the plunky, like clunky.
It's just too loud. It's like the mix is bad. It's omnipresent. It's telling you how to feel. It's too much.
Could you actually play like the living in a taint clip for me, Magellan? I think that one kind of captures
living
some
in
of the
a
music.
taint. What's the beginning? I only see the first couple words
with
of each
great
one.
responsibility.
Oh, okay.
Comes
But he
living.
did say because I did such a good job inspiring all of you, he wants me to stay here to continue inspiring you.
Plunky.
Because with great power
Corporate
comes
music.
living in a taint. Emily.
Yeah.
I blame you. I blame you.
And I guess
royalty-free, like office, like inspirational music.
you could even play the other one, which is the "Why Would You Touch Her" where clip that I gave you, which is also like.
This is the lab. That's our 3D printer. Don't touch it. That's liquid nitrogen. Don't touch it. That's Wendy, our lead software engineer.
Let me guess. Don't touch her?
Why would you touch her?
It sounds like trailer
It sounds
music.
like every clip from the show is a trailer. That's
Right,
the problem.
That's what Bartek said.
And that's the episode. That's not from a trailer for the show. That's the show. Yeah, it's really, it's off base.
It's sad because when I say it's sad, it's because these are easy enough fixes. Everything I've complained about, everything you've complained about, Bartek and you guys, like these are all easy fixes. But I don't think, especially back then, and if you're going to tie it into DC, we're less forgiving of a comedy show finding its feet over time. I think there's a greater emphasis now of like, it needs to be the best show ever now, or it's useless and we throw it in the trash. And we see in many pieces of media canceled shows from Netflix, from streaming services. It's been a big complaint that they aren't patient. They don't know that it took It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia till season 2 to 3 to become the juggernaut it is, and now it's the longest running sitcom in American history. They don't.
Right.
That would never happen now. This show obviously will get better. I mean, you've seen the other 2 episodes. This is a pilot. I'm harsh on it because this is the only one we're going to be talking about, Bartek and I. But it's also because I know that this didn't go on, and I haven't thought about it outside of like the oddity that was, oh yeah, it had a bunch of people I like in it, and yet most of them, if not all the people I like, are completely wasted in this series. It's hilarious to me that a lot of these people would go on to do better, bigger DC projects. Alan Tudyk, who I do think was terrible in this pilot, maybe he's better in the other episodes, but I thought he was terrible. He would go on to be in Doom Patrol as like the season 1 villain, and he's fantastic in it. Ron Funches, he's a great voice actor in the Harley Quinn show. Like, there's many people who
They've done DC stuff, right?
Who would go on after this. This was like their little entryway, and now it's just a little, like a little asterisk in their career of like, oh yeah, they did that too. Interesting.
Yeah, it steps along the way. So I have a couple of quick notes myself. That I need to talk about briefly because they both made me laugh. Number one, when Van is describing his relationship to Bruce Wayne, he mentions that they're sharing an HBO Go login, which is nuts. In 2017, we were 2 iterations of the HBO service ago that it was still called HBO Go. And that just, if the show has ever felt dated, it was that. And later on, we'll talk about another one. And my second one, John, I think this is your last clip. It's the one about putting rocks in your pocket if you're lying to me. Do you have that one handy?
Yeah, that's Bruce Wayne is on the phone.
Bruce Wayne is on the phone for you.
Jackie, if you were lying to me, I will put rocks in your pockets and I will throw you in the ocean.
You are going to make a great father one day. It's really Bruce.
Oh, my God. How do I look?
Like you don't understand how phones work.
That's a great exchange. Everyone's funny in that, especially Christina Kirk's really funny in that.
She's really good.
Like, you don't know how to use a phone is so good. Because she knows that, like, he needs her, so she can say whatever the hell she wants to him, and she's just like, I don't care. And I'm gonna put rocks in your pocket and throw you in the ocean is like a great insult. That's all I have. This pilot's whatever. It's fine.
Is it better than Drive's pilot? Or
No,
any other Ben
it's not.
Queen pilot?
No. A to C's but Drive both better pilots.
You really think Drive's a better pilot? I could understand.
Yeah,
what's
for sure.
happening
Drive's a
in this.
great pilot.
I was jazzed about Drive after that Drive pilot. Hoo-wee.
Yeah,
Fair
he
enough.
does good pilots.
Let's Drive.
He's already packed his briefcase, Ryan.
Oh yeah, he did pack his briefcase, and he did direct episodes of
Exactly.
Space Above and Beyond. A question I actually had for you two guys, because you've actually covered shows like this before, and
Okay.
it's a question I've been asking myself a lot. What happens when the weird pitch of the show fades off from your attention? So what I mean by that is the pitch of this is it's an office place comedy, but the real silly pitch of it is it takes place in the superhero world and they're going to do superhero stuff like he's anti-Joker Venom and Batman's secretly their boss in the higher ups, but they don't know it. And I always think about shows like this and Pushing Up Daisies and so many others where it has like the wacky premise, like, oh, with Pushing Daisies you can have a guy who touches the dead, they come back to life. But when you get rid of that, like when you get acclimatized to that, what is left? In that show, it was a romance, but mainly a procedural. Every week, they had to solve a crime. Every week, they had to be a crime to be solved. Even if it was boring, they had to do it. And this is one of those where I wonder what it's like after you wear off of like, oh, they're mentioning Batman. What is left? Just a normal comedy.
My short answer is it's a bog standard sitcom. As soon as you cut out or you get used to the DC stuff, it's just like it's another decent Office sitcom. I could watch The Office. I could watch Parks and Rec instead.
Is there a show?
Yeah, I think the shows that you named, like Pushing Daisies, you could argue, okay, it's kind of a gimmick of the plot that Ned.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you. Has that power, but it's also like a core part of how the romance functions in that show that he can't touch her, right?
Yeah.
So like it's integrated into the themes of the show and into multiple kind of corners of it. And then, I think for me, honestly, the closest analog to this show is Better Off Ted. And I think in Better Off Ted, like, you can strip away the fact that they're working at Viridian Dynamics, which is this like kind of mysterious corporation that makes all kinds of strange, dangerous products. But that's also integrated into the theming and like the character of the show because Ted is a dad, and it's like Victor Fresco when he made the show was interested in that tension of like, you're a dad at home and then you go to work and you help to make like truly dangerous, terrible things. And isn't it kind of weird that we like separate those things from each other? So here, the superhero stuff really does feel like kind of tacked on part of it. And at least from the pilot, it's not clear what they want to say with that like world necessarily. You could slot these characters into it's an office comedy but blank and make the blank pretty much anything, and I don't think this changes all that much, which is part of the issue, as opposed to some of the other shows we watched that have been like short-lived comedic shows with a weird premise where I think some of those, the premise was actually more core to what made the show compelling to think about, at least in my perspective.
I always look at what ones make that magic of you being excited by it stay because of that amazing premise, and like how do they achieve that? And I don't think this is one that necessarily will achieve it for you guys, nor did it for me, but I think about Red Dwarf as a great example of a great comedy show. Like, yeah, you can just sit for the comedy, but I always loved how it was actually a science fiction show as well, with like great sci-fi ideas. He is the last human in known existence 3 million years in the future, and he must travel back home, and that gets me excited, and it still does to this very day, because they keep building on that. And not only is it that they also back it up with great comedy, but they fulfill the promise of being a genuinely good science fiction comedy show. While this, I look at it and go, okay, is this going to be a genuinely good superhero show? I don't think so. No. I don't really get... The most you get is, I think the last clip I gave you, which is I thought we were here to change the world line, which I think is like the thesis that they're trying to go for.
This was my favorite joke in the episode, so I'm glad you have it.
Bruce says we're obsolete. Gone are the days of a man in a bandit mask stealing a ruby from a museum. Now it's all just supervillains trying to destroy the Earth. It's superheroes fighting one another for vaguely defined reasons. Our products are powerless to stop that.
So he just gave up on us? I thought we were here to change the world.
Who told you that?
It's the company motto.
Oh, that. No, that came with the office. This used to be a diaper company.
That's
God, that also sounds like a trailer.
Yeah, I was about to say trailer. I was about to say that has the writing quality of like a Simpsons joke, where it's like, oh, sorry, yeah, that's a diaper company. But like on The Simpsons, it would be 10 seconds shorter and not have this annoying soundtrack trying to inspire you and then laugh at you. It would just be done. Like, do the joke. You have a good joke on paper, right? Just do it.
That was my favorite joke of the episode, though.
Yeah, it was funny.
I have to say, no one told me that we can get Magellan to play clips.
I thought of it last second.
Okay.
I was like, hey, do you have a soundboard still? And like, hey, I'll give you a series of clips because these are examples.
With great power comes great responsibility.
If I had to pick a clip to summarize the episode, who's that American politician that said, please clap?
Jeb Bush.
Jeb Bush, that's what the show wants. Please laugh, please clap.
Please clap.
Please laugh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
Any final thoughts?
Bartek?
I don't think so.
I'm glad to hear from the three of you who've seen more than just this episode that it does get better. Having only seen the first episode, I do not feel I am at all equipped to say that this show is overall bad or not worth the time. But having only seen the first episode, I wasn't left impressed, and I'm not really keen to check it out more.
You're not going to watch anymore?
No.
Do you think it's because of its overall quality, or is it just inherently something you wouldn't engage with anyway? Even if this was like top tier comedy, is this world and premise something that you would watch?
Well, even though I'm not the biggest superhero fan, I've at least seen enough things here and there. Like, I've seen a couple MCU films. I've seen, I think I saw a couple of DC cartoons growing up on TV. I've seen Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films. I at least get the whole idea of like superheroes. They exist in a city and there's trouble that happens. And there's even, I think, a nod to Man of Steel in this, where it's like, what's the biggest problem? Superman destroys the city, and everyone nods in understanding. I understand those basic premises, so the only things I'm really missing out on are tiny, I guess, Easter egg references.
What about the sitcom style it is, which is office place comedies? We listed a bunch, and you looked at us with deer in the headlight looks of, I don't know any of those.
I don't know, maybe comedy is fine, but not situational comedy? Maybe some other sort of comedy? I don't know, I think ultimately it comes down to the writing. Like, I'm not going to slam any of the actors and say, oh, you did awful. I think if they had material that was a bit better, it could have worked more. I don't know, I don't have all the answers. All I can say is, this one gets a thumbs down from me.
Yeah, it's my final thoughts are that we've gotten comments that like people wish 13 Under 13 we picked shows that we like more, and it is a gamble, and like unfortunately a lot of times like these shows get canceled for good reasons. I think that the show just doesn't have like long-term legs, like you said, Ryan. I would have loved if it was intentionally just like 8 to 10 episodes, and it's like, oh, this is a couple of funny, weird plots that are very specifically focused on the superhero aspect, and the sitcom stuff is on the side. Like, I wish that balance was a little different, and that it was just a little bit better. But I do see the potential.
There's
That's my final thought.
For sure.
There's potential. I mean, with the 13 under 13, I'm one of those people. And I think it's just sometimes you can look at something, and you guys do say this is a method. You look at it and go, oh, that's busted. That's broken. Oh, that's so canceled. And that's why they get chosen. Yeah. And I think that can be a little bit frustrating because after a point, you know why it got cancelled. In this case, I actually think there's more interesting stuff to break down with its cancellation. Like already mentioned, the creative voice was kicked off before the show even began. Its history of trying to be a DC product, coming out in 2017 as unabashedly a sitcom, where what's it competing against. All of that is truly fascinating in itself. And as I said, the connections this project has to successful ones after it, or ones that have gained an audience. Doom Patrol, yes, has been cancelled, but it has a very vocal and diehard audience, which this show would never have and never did have. It does have fans. It does have vocal people. If you go on YouTube, there are many people who talk about this lovingly. And I think that's kind of the thing that I love about canceled media, is there's an affection that you gain for them more than you do with other shows. I love Better Call Saul, but guess what? I love Space Above and Beyond more, in part because it got canceled. It got screwed over. It never got the chance to live and survive and be its own thing. That's why many people love Firefly as well. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm just saying, like, with all canceled shows, there's a real connection that viewers have to shows that they got to watch, and then suddenly it was taken away, and there's a hard understanding of why that is. Sometimes the reason is like it wasn't good and maybe you had rose-tinted glasses on, like with A to Z. Or other times it maybe came out in the wrong era. Maybe it was ahead of the time. Maybe it was aired at the wrong time physically, like on the station. There's many different factors, but to me, this is one where it's like, it's almost at the cusp of that for me, where it's like, I have an affinity towards it. Like when I watched it again, I had a smile on my face because it was like visiting an old friend. But I'm not going to say, oh, this was a good episode just because of that.
No, for sure. But that's what we have for the pilot. This is Wayne or Lose. We've been joined by Ryan and Bartek from Spit and Polish. Do you guys want to plug your stuff for the folks, please?
Sure. You can find us online at Twitter, Spit and Polish Presents. Same with Facebook. We've got an email, spitandpolished@gmail.com. You can email us with recommendations. Wait, recommendations for what? We do a weekly show called Pictures Power, where every week we review a film that comes either recommended from myself, from Ryan, or from listening people. So that's anyone in this world that is not Ryan or Bartek.
Sorry if your name is Ryan or Bartek, by the way.
If you're not Ryan Schliwinski or Bartek Kasprzysak, you can let us know about a film that you would like to hear us review and talk about in an episode, because we're always very keen for that third part of the cycle. It's like, ooh, this is something maybe neither of us know. Let's dive into it and see what's what.
Yes, and we've had chats on a couple of times. It's been a few years now since we've had them on. I've been trying to get a guest spot back on, but it's just been busy schedules. I have 2 or 3 movies that's been sitting in the wait list of like, oh, these will be good for chats to come on. So hopefully get you guys to come on at some point again in the future. In terms of
it's been years.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years. It's been a couple of years.
Was the last one that Della hasn't had us up
that
yet?
was like 2021, I want to say.
Okay.
So,
I still think about any of mine all the time.
Yeah. But
check out that episode, everyone.
Yeah, we've had a couple. We've talked about Max Keeple's big move.
Yeah!
2 twists.
Great film.
And the 2 twists took place right before 9/11. So never forget. That old.
Do you want to talk about Sorry, please.
I was going to say, that movie's old enough to drink now. So I was going to say, with myself, I also host a podcast outside of this one with my wife, Rachel, who maybe one day will join chats on the main feed. Who knows? And she and I talk about science fiction television. We've gone over Star Trek Discovery. We're currently making our way through Babylon 5. We're nearing the end of the show. We're right at the end of season 4 currently. So we've got a couple of movies and then the season, and then that's it. It's wrapped up. And soon, in a couple of weeks from when this releases, or maybe even when this releases, we'll be giving out a Patreon special on our main feed where we will be talking about a cancelled television series, Space Above and Beyond. We go through it episode by episode. Rachel has never seen it before. I have seen it before. It's a great excuse to go over a cancelled piece of media that has a very strong following, even from myself, with somebody who's never engaged with it before, and an excuse for maybe people out there to finally commit to watching Space Above and Beyond, whether it's a rewatch or for the first time. So Yum Yum Podcast is the name, and you can find us on all of those social medias and podcasting sites.
Brilliant. I love it. I'm so excited to listen to this Warriors episode that you guys just published before that pod. And,
I gotta put the thumbnail up. Yeah.
Yep. And I love what you guys do, so keep doing it.
The Warriors with Jerry Horn in it. From
yes,
Peaks.
He's the one at the end. He's the Warriors come out to play. That's Jerry Horn.
Yes, and it also has the lead actor was Abel Horn in Babylon 5, which was Magellan's favorite one-off character name throughout Babylon 5. He kept referencing Abel Horn. Abel Horn.
A lot of horns in that film.
There's too many horns in one movie.
Mate, you could tell me that we said anything on Chatsalon 5 and I'd believe you.
He said mate. He's trying to relate to me as an Aussie.
Whoa, y'all are crazy.
Hello, fellow team.
Constitution.
Thank you again to the Spin Polish folks for being here. Magellan and Alan will be right back after this brief but potent musical break to discuss the second and third episodes of Powerless. Goodbye. Hey folks, editor Alan here. Quick note. This episode recording, if you can't tell, went pretty long because we are a bunch of chaotic young lads talking about Powerless. And so I forgot, and I apologize for forgetting to ask Ryan and Bartek for their chat sums. So after I hit stop on the recording, I said, oh fuck, and then I said, guys, please just keep your recordings going and talk to each other and give me your chat sums. And so here comes Bartek with his, and then we'll have Ryan's chat sum, and that'll be the first half. Thank you, sorry again, love you guys.
Ooh, I went first last time, and I'm going first again.
Thank God we got this in time. I was almost about to press the stop button on this record. Bartek,
yeah,
what's your chat
it was
sum?
really awkward. We stopped, and then someone yelled, fuck! Like Alan, I reckon, maybe would be the one that says that. Chat sum. Yeah, last time I recommended 4 things. I think I'll just keep it to 1 this time. I play a lot of Japanese role-playing games. It's probably my favorite genre, and I played one recently that I really enjoyed. It's from, I think, the late 90s. It's called Rhapsody, A Musical Adventure. I tend to like to eventually sometimes get around to older ones because they have a different sort of localization flavor to them, and this one really just was just really charming, and I really enjoyed it. It's a very simple JRPG where it's about a girl who falls in love with a prince who gets captured by an evil woman and she has to go save him. The game's known for having a bunch of these musical sequences where, they sing for a little while, and it's, really sincere, really charming. Gameplay is easy as hell, so you can get through it very quickly, very easily, and I really enjoyed it.
Is it a rhythm game or something, or is it just a normal JRPG?
It's like a very simplified strategy RPG, yeah.
Okay.
Like you move around like a little bit on the map to hit enemies, but they're not very big maps. It's not like Fire Emblem or Devil Survivor or anything like that. You can get it on Switch under the name like Prinny Volume 3 or something with another game.
I have a chat sum. No, I have 4, in fact. First chat sum.
Are they relevant to the thing we just reviewed, like I was?
First chat sum, make Ellen scream, oh god! Second chat sum. No, in all seriousness, I've been getting back into listening to music again. I've been kind of off listening to music in free time as I travel from work and to and from work. I've been mainly doing podcasts, but I've kind of entered that zone where I'm no longer really listening to the podcasts I'm listening to. I don't know if you've ever had that sensation, but I'm getting back into my musical kick, and I'm like, what music do I want to connect back with? And I went, I should listen to the last musician I saw live. I have, before all of the lockdowns and stuff happened, because I have actually seen a musician since then, but I am recommending Kate Miller-Heidke, who's an Australian musician, pop musician, pop opera, classically trained singer. She is an icon down here. She's done so many songs. She's done so many great albums. She's funny, she's serious. A lot of her songs revolve around her mental landscape at the time. She's just had one a couple of years ago come out about being a mother, and she's really, really good. She has a beautiful voice. She was a classically trained opera singer and now has turned into singing music that she wants to do while still using that skill. So she can really hit those high notes and really go for it. She competed in Eurovision a few years back and was really beloved there. Everyone was really happy with what she did. I love her. The way I would describe her is, you remember that one song in The Fifth Element that the blue alien opera singer sings? She has a bunch of songs where she sings like that, just totally seriously, and it's beautiful. I love Kate Miller-Heidke. She's one of my favorites. She recently is a voice in Bluey, which is a beloved animated show. She's recently done a voice in Bluey. I'm surprised she hadn't done a song for it already, but she also wrote a few musicals down here, and she did Muriel's Wedding, the musical, which is pretty good. So Kate Miller-Heidke, just start with any album or song you like. She's pretty versatile, pretty easy to enter with. Her songs are relatable, funny. She has some quirky ones out there like Ducks Don't Need Satellites, which is a song about the simplicity of animals and how they don't understand the intricate workings of society around them. Like, they don't need satellites. They just say quack, quack, and that's their version of hello. So she's really good. I recommend her highly.
Well, Ryan, what are the other three things?
Oh, yes, sorry. The other two things are record a podcast with your friends' chats, even if it takes a while for the podcast recording date to be set in stone. And do I have another one ready on the list? Watch Space Above and Beyond. That's a re-chatsome. You can put that in your re-chatsome list of the chatsome once, doing it again. It's on YouTube, Space Above and Beyond. It's right there. People have upgraded it into HD because, it was originally aired on Fox, which means it's now owned by Disney, which means it will never, ever see distribution, ever. Truly sad. Truly sad, that is. I mean, cowards won't even put up The Lone Gunman on Disney+, but they will put up Millennium? Come on, if you're going to do all the X-Files spin-offs, give me the one where the pilot episode is about them stopping a commercial airliner from crashing into the Twin Towers. And yes, this episode aired before 9/11, a few months before. Yes, and it's an insider job by the government. Yes. Why did Vince Gilligan write this script? What did he know and how did he know it? I don't know. But that's my chatsums.
That was only 3.
Oh, no, I did the oh god at the beginning for Alan.
Welcome back to Chatserless. I'm still Magellan. This is still Alan. Hey, Alan, what's up?
Hi, good morning. Welcome back to the office. How's the weather? It's so hot.
Oh, boy. Let me just make myself a coffee. Don't talk to me yet.
Don't even speak to me until I have my cup of superhero juice. We're still talking about Powerless, though, huh?
We sure are. We're talking about episodes 2 and 3 because you know what? The episodes are shorter and we don't want to spend 6 weeks watching it. We want to spend 4. So we did a little math. So we watched episodes 2 and 3 of Powerless for the second half here. So we'll talk about episode 2 first, Wayne Dream Team, which isn't a pun, unlike Wayne or Lose. It was written by Dean Laurie, directed by Mark Buckland, classic sitcom director Mark Buckland. It aired on February 9th, 2017. What happened in this episode of Powerless, Alan?
In this episode, with a new project idea greenlit, Emily tries to get her team inspired. Van is on a mission to be included in the Wayne Dream Team photo. There are a lot of funny pictures of Mark Buckland on Google Images.
This guy's got a face. He's sort of got a, what's that guy, that actor?
E. Cummings?
The poet E. Cummings?
Yeah. Who are you thinking of?
No, I'm thinking of the guy. All right. What's that guy?
Matthew McConaughey.
Matthew McConaughey. All my brain wanted to give me was Woody Harrelson and Woody Guthrie, and neither of those were correct.
You're right. Swirling in the toilet, though. You're swirling in the same toilet.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that they're toilet people. What? I don't know. Men. Wayne Dream Team. Yeah, it's not a pun. I don't think they're going for puns in this show. I don't think they're resisting the urge to be negative.
Come on now.
I was gonna say I think they're resisting the urge to be good. No,
stop it.
Okay, bad.
Slap the hand.
I did it. I slapped my own hand. Wayne Dream Team. The Jack-o'-lantern guy seems to be a recurring villain on the show. How do you feel about him?
Good. I actually really like it.
He's funny, right? He's like kind of funny.
I'm just saying I like the thing because I don't want to dislike it.
No. Be honest. Be real.
I feel apathetic about it.
Okay. I'm gonna find something you like.
Take it or leave it. Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
You didn't like the whip joke at first because it was racially charged. You did like when later they referenced it again and they acknowledged that it was a little racist to make a whipping joke in front of Ron Funches.
Well, the first time it was still aware of that, because he was like, I'm not going to tell you why that wasn't okay or whatever, but I like that they brought it back because his delivery of have you been doing that joke to more black people was pretty funny. I laughed at that. I thought that was good.
Are they tokenizing Ron Funches? There's later a line where we learn that he's from Atlantis, and he's like, I'm not from Atlanta. Yeah. I'm not Donald Glover. I'm not playing a black man playing against Danny Pudi in a sitcom named Donald Glover who's from Atlanta. Get it right. I thought that was like weirdly meta and cool. But are they tokenizing him?
Let's see if 3 points make a line here.
Okay.
I guess 2 points make a line. 3 points make a triangle. And 4 points. What's something that's worth 4 points?
A square.
Know. Yeah.
What do you feel about Fantasy Superhero League?
Did they, at the beginning of the episode, make it clear that it was a superhero thing?
Yeah, they said Fantasy Superhero League.
At the very beginning.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk again about the premise of the show. Because I think we talked a lot in the first half about how it feels like this is sort of office sitcom. We slap superheroes on it. My understanding of the original pitch or the original conception of the show is that it's an insurance company managing the claims of people who have been injured by superhero incidents or whatever.
Yeah.
And when it was brought into production and DCified, it became more like, we're a tech company owned by Bruce Wayne, kind of sort of mitigating superhero issues or whatever. And I think that kind of takes some of the bite out of it and takes some of the like motivation out of why it is that we're in a superhero environment. And so I don't know. To me, I'm curious what you thought about the Superhero Fantasy League thing, because to me it sort of felt like, well, let's do the Office plot, and then we'll figure out how to make it a superhero thing afterwards. And the way that they did that was, well, somebody wants to get into the Office Fantasy League, they're being excluded, so they do XYZ. And how does that make sense? I guess the superheroes are the Fantasy League or something.
Yeah, this is what people in this city would care about enough to be like, yeah, I think Batman's gonna win more fights this month, and there are people who track that and care about that because that's more day-to-day in your life than football.
Yeah.
I think that the plot and how it resolves is very like normal, and I think that the final moment where they let Vanessa Hudgens' character, whose name I really should just learn,
Emily.
Right? They let Emily back into the league, and she's like, "Ha!" and like, "I'm doing it with you guys." I thought that was like so forced and bad, and it kind of undid my liking, what I liked about the plot, which was, why is there a fantasy superhero league? Why, like, and then also tie that into an office comedy. we turn off your internet. You guys can't get distracted at work. Except the show's premises just break down so quickly if you think about them. If you turn the internet off, how are they supposed to do their work? Like, their work probably still uses the internet. I realize that the two guys at least work in a lab, but like, I'm sure they still need the internet. I think you actually stopped their work much worse by doing this. It just paints Emily as like so misanthropic and petty that she's like, I don't get what I want, so nobody gets what they want. And it's like, they at the end of the episode, they do say like, what the fuck, dude? Like, that's not a normal thing to do. That's not a cool thing to do. And she eats crow by watching this 6-hour anti-bullying video, which, here's a laugh. Here's a laugh. Powerless laugh number 1. The puppet in the 6-hour video, it is implied that the reason it's like the storyline of the puppet is that it's trying to say the N-word. Puppet wants to say the N-word. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, that being working in the background there, I thought was pretty good.
Yeah,
I did laugh at those like cut off lines of the puppet being like, but how come so and so gets to say it? What the heck? Yeah, that was fine. I don't know. I think this episode is a great example of the show not really committing super hard in one direction or another, because they're sort of doing like, it's a fantasy league thing. They're sort of doing like HR, let's do some HR jokes. And then we're sort of doing the superhero world stuff, but I just can't quite, I think any one of those is a perfectly workable thing to do. I was intrigued at the beginning of this idea of like, oh, it's a fantasy league, but in a superhero world. So maybe they're drafting superheroes or something. Like, that's interesting. Let's talk about that a little more. Let's explore that. Let's make that a running concept in the episode and think about how that impacts people, how they would react to events happening around them because they are, following this person. Because like in fantasy, there's all these weird kind of specific stats about like, oh, this person's on my team, but I want them to do well in this particular way because of how they interact with my team or whatever. So it's like, shoot, Batman stopped the bank robbery. Oh, why are you upset about that? Wow, because he didn't punch the guy in the mouth. And I was really I had a side bet that it was going to be a mouth punch, or he was going to use the shark repellent or whatever. There's like things you could do to make that plot. And maybe that gets like too, futzy with let's think about the world that we're in. But it felt like they left that on the table to do this HR thing that felt very like very nondescript, and not having worked a job where like there is an HR department. I know what they do. It's not some grand mystery to me. Like, I understand.
It's not an arcane magic.
I understand what HR does, and I am kind of done with the office comedy thing of like, let's make fun of HR as a concept. I don't know, like The Office making Toby this like, sad sack of a character. We need HR departments that function. Can we not?
I think it's one of the things, honestly, that The Office has like done that has negatively impacted the real world, because I like know people who think of like, oh, IT are the weirdos, and like they're all and it's like, they are isolated for a reason. They're outsourced for a reason. A lot of those things are like racially and like financially motivated. And so like stereotypes come into how hiring practices work and how different departments are perceived. It's all really messy. And like, I know that HR is a group that is focused on protecting the company. That's like the interesting thing about HR, is that even though it's called human resources, it doesn't give resources to humans. It gives them to corporations.
Right.
The episode is not about that. The HR rep in this is just like a guy who has a trump card that you can use to turn the internet off, and he's like a funny short guy, and that's the joke. I do think, and this is why I liked these episodes more than the pilot, both episodes 2 and 3 have like somewhat interesting things to say about management and why Emily's management style isn't working for her team. and maybe this is like the NBA in me, but like at the end of this episode, Van is the one who tells her like, you know, if they're going to do stuff, you need to just trust that like they're gonna hit their deadlines, whether you tell them to it or not, whether you turn their internet off or not. They know that they have deadlines and they're adults. And if you just listened to them and like tried to like work with their limitations and what they want to do, then they would get your stuff done and people would be happy. Doesn't someone say in either this or the third episode, like, you know, do we want to be the people who get things done magically in a week, or do we want to get them done with work-life balance? It's like kind of an interesting like joke, but also a point that they're making about the problems with her management. Because you can't just keep having this miracle maker come in and be like, I'm the new boss, and I like my method of
right, this
management.
very Mary Sue sort of thing.
Right, my method is perfect because it makes everybody like each other. And repeatedly, the other characters in this are like, no, we actually have a system that works. We probably need somebody to like give us discipline and give us deadlines, but like turning the internet off is treating them like children, and the show seems to acknowledge that. That's the interesting nugget I got out of this episode.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think it's lost for me in the like pile of other ideas that are in this one.
Yeah,
but I can see that being compelling.
And also stuff like, you know, does Emily do that much work at this job? She's the head of a department, but she has a boss who does less work than she does, and we all joke that like, oh, he just wants to collect a check and get promoted. And yet, what's it called? She also just like tells people to do things. It's just like she's a middle manager, and I think that's become more and more explicit now at this point of the show. That it's like, oh. I just thought that was interesting. Like, who are the people really doing the work at Wayne Industries or whatever? It is the scientists. Right. It's them, but you need management at the same time. I guess what I'm saying is that like the stuff I got out of the show is stuff that it just hinted at, and my brain took it off in its own direction.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the last time I'll say this, but that's also stuff that like Better Off Ted did so much better, because like that's Ted's whole deal is he's weirdly somewhere in the middle of the hierarchy of Viridian dynamics, and his friends are people who are like below him in that hierarchy. He's got this weird relationship with Portia de Rossi's character who's above him in that hierarchy, and that is a lot clearer in that show. And also the kind of like way that he's having to bop around and coordinate different people and has a management style that sort of works but sometimes doesn't. I don't know, the way that I was describing this to my friend at work is it feels like, okay, so at Walgreens, I've been enjoying, they have the Walgreens brand, which is nice. That's the Walgreens store brand.
Nice, right.
And I really like, they have a sparkling beverage that's like a cherry limeade. And I love it. Oh, this stuff is so good. The Nice brand cherry limeade sparkling beverage. And to me, Better Off Ted is that. It's like the store brand, hard to find, like SEO terrible thing that I found, and I'm like, this is oddly good. I couldn't have a ton of this, but it's oddly good. And then this show is like a name brand, highly publicized version of the same drink, but I have it and I'm like, why is this not as good as the hitting. Walgreens brand? It's just not hitting. It's mid. It's not peak. So that's what this feels like. This show is like, we're getting this name brand and you're drawn in, you're like, okay, I know that brand. I know things about it. I've had experiences with it before, in this case that brand being DC. But then you have it and you're like, okay, it doesn't quite bust in the way that I would like it to, unfortunately.
Any straight notes on this one? I want to get into the third episode.
Oh golly, there's a lot of like what, which is just such
people
a
saying that,
such a. This show is so 2017. I feel like everything that we talked
and you're
about in the first half,
1994.
everything that we shoebox, everything that we talked about in the first half, the music, the detached performances, all those things. Those didn't feel like issues of this show specifically. Those to me felt like issues of we're making a network sitcom in 2017. Because this wasn't this on NBC, or am I wrong?
I saw it on NBC's website, so I think that I can double check that for you. But I'm pretty sure you're right.
It just felt
it's NBC.
It just felt 2017 network sitcom as heck. And
how much? Why do they say bitch so much though? I'm sorry, I said it.
Golly gee, they say it a lot in this one, huh?
A lot. I didn't count it, but it's like weirdly
not funny. It's so strange.
We're in this weird middle era where you can say that on network TV, but you can't curse. So it's just this awkward, like, I don't know. This odd.
Yeah, because in the next one, there are characters who say shit or whatever.
Yeah.
And they bleep it, which is so weird.
Bizarre. I always thought that was intentional. Like, you don't need to do a bleep. I think it was. But, like, you don't do a bleep censor. You don't do a bleep joke unless you absolutely have to. Whereas they use that word willy-nilly. Like, women and men, too. It's really weird.
Yeah, it was strange.
I have a couple quickies as well. And we can go back and forth. Ben Quinn is just obsessed with office sitcoms. The comparisons to A to Z are like stark to me. I couldn't find the word there. Like it just seems so obvious. Like he likes office sitcoms, and I think it's not just him. I think like The Office changed the landscape of network sitcoms, and it's like, oh, The Office space is like the perfect place for comedy. And I don't agree with that. I always have appreciated family and like single people sitcoms more than I have people working in an office. And you know why, Magellan? It's because I want to think about anything other than work when I'm watching TV. And when I watch office sitcoms, even when I watch The Office, all I think about is fucking work in my day job, and I need TV to escape from that. So it's like there's something a little bit like depressing about the fact that like if I was in the DC universe, well, I'd probably just work in like a pretty normal insurance company and make products, and they would be fine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I don't love office sitcom stuff either. I don't seek it out. I think it was something that I would watch more before I had a job. And now that I've had a job, not that I've worked, I mean, I have worked in an office, but not substantially. But yeah, now that I've worked at a school, I'm not super interested in that sort of thing. Although I do really like Abbott Elementary, so, and I do really like AP Bio, so.
Yeah, but those are about your job, right, about teaching.
Yeah.
And they're relatable, and they're coming from places that are like true to your experience. A little more
specific.
Yes.
Too, I think. But yeah. There's just a lot of this in the air at this time in 2016, 2017. So
I was looking at best sitcoms of 2017. You want to take I'll show you a little bit of this. The middle is still going strong.
Great.
And then here comes a couple good ones. Fresh Off the Boat on ABC is doing great.
Mm-hmm.
Silicon Valley is in its best era.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine's good. Search Party is good. I never watched it. Master of None. That's the kind of stuff that Alan and Magellan are watching. Is like, this is a little bit weird. This is a little bit off kilter. Blackish is doing great. That continued a legacy. BoJack Horseman kind of broke the barrier of what a sitcom is. Like stuff that's like a sitcom but not a sitcom, like The Good Place. That's the 2017 stuff that's really good. Whereas this is just trying to be a sitcom. And that's why it's like kind of mid. It's like, do something else. It's like, do anything else. I want more weird stuff in the DC universe, but not this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I loved the line. I think this is from Van talking about how independent he is. That he says, I personally told the art department to do this for me all by myself. Like, that's, again, the classic, like, making fun of management for not doing work thing. And this was either him or Lydia. Jesus. Him or Jackie, who says, it's a myth, like the Yeti or the unconditional love of a mother. Oh, he says that, and then Jackie says, and you've spent years chasing both or something. Oh, man. Christina Kirk is a gem in this show. She's such a gem.
She's great. Yeah. I like that she's doing Lydia, but in a more, like, kinder and more subtle, and that's fun in its own way.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
You want to move into the third and final?
Yeah, let's talk about that third episode. So we also watched Sinking Day, which is episode 3 of Powerless, written by Paul Mather and directed by Jay Chandrasekhar. It aired on February 16th, 2017. Alan, what happened in this episode of Powerless?
Well, Magellan, with a special guest director, we learned that when Van's incompetence cost the team a client, the Atlanteans, Emily hopes to make a deal. Oh, sorry, no. He loses another client, and then Emily hopes to make a deal with the people of Atlantis, and Van's father sets him on a path of redemption. The syntax of that sentence is terrible. Okay. Van and Emily are the highlights of this one, and the reason is that the Atlantean plot is fucking good. It's pretty funny. This was directed by Jay Chandrasekhar, who you may or may not recognize from... if you're in your 30s, if you're in your 30s, then you're like, oh, dude, Super Troopers was the greatest movie of 2001. That was Jay Chandrasekhar, director and writer. Beer Fest, 2006. Like, we're a teensy weensy bit young to be like big fans of those films, but I saw them. I'm familiar with them. I know people who like them. He even was in like the Dukes of Hazzard remake. He's a pretty funny guy. I think he's even been on like Comedy Bang Bang and stuff. Seems like he's got a good comedic sense. So he brings a comedic sensibility, and I think it works really well in that specific, in the Atlantean plot line, where we also learn that Ron is secretly an Atlantean and doesn't talk about it.
He directed a bunch of Community episodes. I think that's where I know his name from.
Oh, sure. Okay, yeah. That's what he does mostly these days. And I generally think the stuff he works on is funny. What's the vibe check for Sinking Day?
I think this is one where, whether you like it or not is going to be determined by what you think is funny in like it's the DC universe, but kind of a thing. And at first I was like, so like they're just normal humans who are from Atlantis, and we're just going to kind of do that and say people are from Atlantis. Isn't that weird? But then when we're actually dealing with the Atlantean businessmen, and they all kind of have this same weird affect where they're kind of like, that's really, Aquaman's coming? That's really cool.
Like, not too up, just like, oh, interesting. Like, so neutral. It's really specific and weird.
Yeah, I really like. They are acting like fish would act if they were in people's bodies.
That's so true.
And it's very funny. I thought that was hilarious. So I really liked that. And that is not exactly what I would want from a show that has like Atlanteans or whatever. I think I want a version of this show that's like a bit more for color and a bit more kind of like golden agey comic book stuff, as opposed to like, it's pretty much the modern day, and Batman owns this company. I wish the show would like wear its comic book roots on its sleeve a little bit more, but if you accept the fact that it doesn't, I think there's stuff in this episode that's pretty fun.
It's actually a criminal crime that this show confirms, if this is a canonical DC Universe show, that Batman and the DC Universe all exist in the same world as the 2016 United States election, which
this show really plays fast and loose with this meta stuff, because the 2016 election exists and has turned out the same way. Atlanta is on TV and Donald Glover is in it. We reference multiple like real life cities, which don't those not exist in the DC universe? Aren't they all the like Century City and Gotham City type stuff?
I thought that was the Gotham thing, and then Marvel does the actual names of the cities. That's what I thought.
That's what I always thought, because they name Atlanta and like Philadelphia or whatever. Alec Baldwin and Stephen, all the Baldwin brothers exist. It's just kind of like,
what a poorly aged joke, by the way. Unfortunate.
Right. It's just too many of those. HBO Go exists. It's too many of these in this show for what I don't think is very much payoff, personally. I don't love jokes that like sell out the world for the sake of the humor, and it feels like they do a lot of that.
Totally. I genuinely wonder if these are like network notes jokes.
I kind of, to me, it kind of reads like this show was turned into a DC show at like the last minute.
Oh, like they scratched off the name and then like put the DC sticker on top, and we're like, it's out.
Yeah, because like
I believe it.
This if this show was, it's a superhero insurance company and it's not set in a particular world, it's our world, but now there are superheroes all of a sudden in the last couple of years, and now we need to like come up with all these new things, like having an insurance company for people to have, you know, superhero disaster insurance or whatever. Then sure, I'll allow you to name celebrities that are celebrities in real life and name real places and make references to things that exist in our world. So I wonder, I don't know about the specific production of the show, but I wonder if it was written or drafted or conceived prior to it being something that was attached to the DC universe, and then they kind of after the fact added DC stuff in, because that would make sense to me given the product that we're seeing here.
Yeah, like you would never sell a show that's about an insurance company making funny products without some sort of hook. That just wouldn't do well.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's totally possible, because like Van can just have a billionaire cousin that he likes and it looks up to a lot. There's comedy in it being Batman, or being Bruce Wayne, but like it doesn't have to be Bruce Wayne. It could just be like a famous billionaire. That's simple. And then all these real world jokes wouldn't feel weird. I think that the 2016 election joke will still feel weird because we're so far out from it, but that's just time doing that to it. It's not it's not the show's fault that joke feels terrible right now. Right. But yeah, I think when the show gets silly and leans into the DC stuff and the superhero universe stuff, it is better. Like that's why I like the Atlantean plot. Atlanteans just exist. Like we have to court different marketplaces based on where people live in this world. And in Atlantis, they're pretty private. They don't work with any company, but they still need protection just like everyone else. So we get to own the Atlantis account. That's like kind of cool. That's a pretty interesting world building detail. And, you know, it's couched in like Van's ego and his desire to please his father, and this bizarro scene where he gets distracted and plays on his guitar, which felt like, did Alan Tudyk just want to play on the guitar or something?
Yeah, that felt kind of random.
And then it comes back and Emily like joins him and they write a song together. It's like, why?
Yeah, that was a little strange.
So I also, in that plot line, the whole thing about the tuna, how they keep almost bringing up the tuna, felt kind of funny to me. I was like, it's like a wacky sitcom gag. People are like shocked by what's being said and done, and that's funny to me. But let's not forget, this is another storyline in a Ben Queen show. He's now 0 for 3 on characters with daddy issues, being like, and then we briefly get to see Van's dad. I didn't recognize that actor, by the way. Was that the person Ryan was saying was Jimmy Stewart? Or Jimmy Olsen?
No. He was talking about Emily's dad.
Oh, yes.
In the first one. No, this guy who's Van's dad, I know him because he's the dad in of James Roday's character in Psych. So that's how I knew him.
Oh, is James Roday the main guy?
The main guy, yeah.
Okay.
Sean whatever Sean's name in that show is. Sean.
So you're talking about Henry Spencer.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sean
sure.
Spencer. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like the grumpy dad.
And he's that in this as well.
Right.
There's no pathos to this, though. There's no like, oh, I feel really bad for Van. It's just like, your dad sucks. You're probably a trust fund child. You are definitely a trust fund child. And I don't like you because of this. And I'm not saying I have to, but like, of all the people to introduce a daddy issues plot, it has to be him. Like, ugh, whatever.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it sort of introduces the same, I've been kind of praising Better Off Ted in contrast with the show, but I think it's a similar complaint that we had with Better Off Ted, which is like, out of one side of your mouth, you're saying like, let's make fun of these kind of corporate stereotypes or like representatives of the elite and characters who are here for comedic effect. And then out of the other side of your mouth, you're saying like, and look at them having these really sweet, completely sincere problems.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, is he a sad little man or is he like an absurd guy who we're going to laugh at? And obviously no one person is wholly one or the other, but they're just not striking that balance in a way that worked for me.
Because what is this plot ultimately about, right? It's Emily wants to get the Atlanteans by like doing something useful and like relevant to their culture, to Sinking Day, the day that Atlantis went under the sea. But they're like, oh, we don't actually have the time to do that. We just have to give them what they think they want instead of what they actually want, which is to see Aquaman. So if we are just like, hey, here's that alcohol you like. Hey, here's a perfume that you could give to maybe your mistress. That's a really weird plot point. Here's like gifts for you guys and smoke and mirrors. Look, we love your culture. Okay. And the lesson is like, I don't know, sometimes you just have to like give people gifts instead of what they actually asked for, and it's okay. It doesn't come to a cohesive like moral point.
Yeah. Right.
That's another thing that I'm realizing that I want my sitcoms to have morality. And maybe that's like not universal. I don't know if that's universal, but I want to come at the end of it and be like, okay, I learned this. And like A to Z actually did that fairly well. It's one of my favorite things about A to Z was like, oh, this is a useful like detail, a problem that was solved talking about a relationship. Okay.
Yeah, I think those A to Z episodes were fairly focused around a central theme. And, if morality is too far, at the very least cohesion or some kind of like theme. And I think what we've been seeing in Powerless so far is that there just isn't quite a cohesive understanding of what the show is or what it's trying to accomplish. The closest thing that we got was the title of the show being Powerless, the theme song showing these people in a superhero world not able to affect it, the monologue where Alan Tudyk's character is like, we're powerless to do anything about what's going on in the world. Yeah. So there's this sort of thing of like, we are normal people in a world that is much more powerful than we are, but there are things that we can do, or maybe we're trying in vain. And that can be kind of a central question to the show.
Yeah.
But then this episode where it's like, so we're going to try to make a business deal with Atlantis. It's like, okay. How does that connect to what your show's about? And it doesn't. It's just like kind of having fun playing around in the sandbox of the DC universe, which is fine. I'm perfectly happy to watch a show that's kind of like having fun with it. And so those parts of the episode I liked, but yeah, I don't think it's super cohesive.
I don't really like to play script doctor on this podcast, although we do it on 13 to 13 sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, I love the idea you've posited there of like Powerless being about what the title is, like superheroes through circumstance and through like, the American way or whatever, and powers get to have all this like notoriety and safety and protection and power, whereas all we can do is fumble around in the dirt, in the scraps. Like, all we can do is be people like Van, who just want one more promotion and then they're going to be happy, or just want to be. And like Emily has like an earnest moral view, which is like, I don't just want a promotion. Like, I want to make something meaningful that protects the average person. And like, that's a really interesting contrast between the boss and the employee and the manager, is like why they do the work that they do. Because her job doesn't require her to have powers or ever like ascend. It's just like, I'm doing good enough in my corner and I accept that I am powerless in a world of superheroes. Whereas his is like, he basically wishes he had superpowers, but with money. Yeah, sorry. That's the show I want to watch.
Yeah, and I think it's here. I think there are elements of it here. I think it's just not entirely focused. And like we were saying in the first half, you know, sitcoms take a while to figure that out. I don't know that I could name off the top of my head a sitcom that has an understanding of what it is by episode 3.
For sure.
But, you know, we obviously know that there are only 9 more after this. So we'll see.
It's the thing with Ben Queen's shows is he just never got the chance to let his shows grow. And all of them could grow into better shows, but never did.
Yeah, because I definitely felt that way about A to Z. I think it could have been a much better show. I don't know how much better it would have been, but I think if you give A to Z a full 26 episode first season, I think you end up with a show that where the average episode is better than what we got. And I suspect the same will happen here. I mean, when you have this cast and you kind of build some things to play with and you get a sense of what are the actors doing well and who are these characters, you know, I think it gets better, but we'll see how much better it gets, I guess, by the end of this.
Indeed. As we get to the end of this episode, I want to ask you, do you have any stray notes about Sinking Day?
Was that Adam West narration just in the first episode and that's it?
That's correct.
Okay. That's kind of interesting and random. I like Ron Funch's character's Ron. Is that his character?
Yeah, that's his name.
I like Ron's conspiracy theory that Bruce Wayne is the Flash and Stephen Baldwin is a character played by Alec Baldwin. I thought that was a funny line.
Pretty good. Although again, real world weird.
Yeah. What else? The only other note I had is that randomly Brendan Fraser is like revered in Atlantis. He's sort of got like a oh my god, what's that guy who in Germany? David Hasselhoff.
Yeah,
he's kind of like the David Hasselhoff of Atlantis, which is pretty fun.
That's so accurate, right?
So I like that joke, random detail.
That joke is funnier in 2017 when people are like, Brendan Fraser, who the fuck? And now it's like, yeah, Brendan Fraser, who had his comeback, and we're so happy for him, and he's Oscar award winner. But in 2017, it's like, who? The host?
Right.
Yeah. My last note was that Vanessa Hudgens was actually my age when this show came out, which is making me feel weird about not only like how long she's been in Hollywood, like how young she was in High School Musical, but also like her potential and how, like, you know, she gets a lot of flack for the stuff that she said during the pandemic and stuff, and I don't support any of that. The whole like people who are going to get sick are going to get sick narrative sucks. Yeah. But culturally, people forget that Vanessa Hudgens, as her character is actually half Filipina. Fun fact. I'd always forget about that. So she's even like done some work in the Philippines, which I think is pretty dope. Shout outs to that aspect of her life. It's her and Biba Doobie are the two Filipina famous people. I saw. Oh my god! Sorry, this is gonna take so long to explain. Never mind. Just never mind. I saw a thing about Biba Doobie today. I think you could totally do a legitimate Chats parody where, to make one small point, I explain something for 15 minutes, and so I'm trying to.
Yeah, that's what I do too.
I'm not going to do it this time. I'm resisting the urge. But I do want to ask you what we're watching next time on Chatterless.
Yeah, so next time we are watching the next 3 episodes of Powerless. So we're watching episodes 4, 5, 6. First, Emily dates a henchman.
Oh,
That's kind of fun.
yeah.
When Emily sets her sights on the dating world, she unknowingly falls for one of the Riddler's henchmen.
Ooh.
Okay, I'm interested. Teddy and Ron find a Batman artifact and discover Van's superhero fantasy. Okay, then season 1, episode 5, Cold Season. Emily convinces Teddy to enter a revolutionary invention into the Wayne Innovation Contest. Van has Ron assemble a toy in hopes of preoccupying his new girlfriend's child. All right. And then 6, I'm a friend you, I think is how that would be said.
Yeah.
When Emily learns that Jackie needs some extra cash, she tries to help her out. Also, Van is on a witch hunt and sets his eyes on Teddy, Ron, and Wendy. Okay, that's extremely nondescript.
A witch hunt?
So, yeah. For what reason, I don't know, but we'll find out.
Okay. I want to see Alan Tudyk in his funny costume next week. That's what we're
Yeah,
gonna
I
get.
can't wait. That'll be good.
Great. Magellan, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on another podcast called Super Smash Echoes that I do with my friend Justin, where we play and then discuss video games related to the Super Smash Brothers franchise, Super Smash Echoes. Check it out. And then you can also read some of my writing on my newsletter, which is at notthatmagellan.substack.com. Alan, what about you?
I'm on a couple other pods. The Creature Quorum is a show I do with my friend Six over on scanlinemedia.com. Over there, we're talking about the Pokemon and rating them and deciding which ones are filler and which ones are keepers. It's very funny and silly. We also talk about Monster Hunter monsters periodically. We just caught up on Pokemon again. We done ran out because they only put out so many in the latest games. But we're gonna keep doing that show periodically and covering other games and creatures. We're also bringing back the Garnet Wager podcast. That's all I'm gonna say. It's coming back. If you're familiar with it, if you're not, it's a reality TV show podcast with a twist. And my other main gig is Talking Marketing, a bi-weekly would kill me. A bi-monthly marketing discussion podcast where I, through the help of my volunteer job with the American Marketing Association, have the opportunity of talking to really cool marketing people about their work and their lives. So Talking Marketing, found wherever you listen to podcasts. That's all I got. Can you give us the chat's plug zone this week?
I sure can. So if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do so in a few different ways. You can email us at chatspod@gmail.com with any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, requests to be on an episode of Powerless, just like our friends Ryan and Bartek were on the first half here. You can also reach out to us and follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/chatspod or at chatspod on Twitter. You can find us on YouTube, Chat's a Television Podcast, and find the podcast itself on any podcast platform, however you found it. Wherever you did happen to find it, you could consider rating it. That would be cool and nice. Or you could also share the show with a friend, a colleague, someone that you work with, for example, in honor of this show. And then if you want to support the show with money, there's a Patreon, patreon.com/chatspod, where you can back us at $1, which gets you access to some old bonus content, as well as access to our Discord. That's one of two ways you can engage with fellow listeners. The other, of course, is our subreddit, reddit.com/r/chatspod. You can back us at $3, which gets you access to now twice monthly bonus content, as well as a healthy backlog of triple-digit bonus episodes full of lots of great stuff. Us piloting things, commenting on movies, commentary tracks, and some kind of chilling out, bonus episodes like that. And then $5 a month or more gets you thanked at the end of every main feed episode. Our current $5 and up patrons include Stefan, Six, Pat, and Nick of the Brothers at Infinite War, Michael, May Louise, Marcus, my mom, Lee, Kat, Justin, Jen, and Arthur. Thank you, folks, for supporting the show. We also have a website, chatspod.com, and we want to direct you to @CamillaStrader, our friend Camilla, who created our podcast art. Support her on the socials. And then we will also direct you to our chatsums for this week, things that we recommend that you do between now and next time. Alan, do we have the same chatsum this week?
No, I'm going to let you have it. Oh,
thank you. Thank you so much. Okay,
of course,
go ahead. Dude. What's yours?
I'm going to give you two quickies.
Okay,
first of all, worth noting, this was a comment from Ryan, actually, in our Discord, Ryan, who was just on the pod, that, chatsums in our vision of them and how they've existed since Triathlon 5 are of the moment recommendations, which means that like this is being recommended to you on the night that we recorded the episode, in this case May 15th 2023. None of them are endorsements of the people who make these work necessarily, unless we say that, and none of them are permanent recommendations. So like, yeah, you can go on and find a Google spreadsheet that we link that has all the chatsums on it, and like those were all relevant when we recorded. But I'm not here to defend every single thing I've ever chatsummed from 10 years ago because I maybe finished it and didn't like it after the fact. I just have to make that clear, like for legal reasons, you know. Chatsums are effervescent and weekly. I like to think that they expire in a week, basically. That's like, how do you feel about that whole situation?
Yeah, that feels right to me.
Okay, I'm glad we're in agreement. So as of today, my two chatsims are the PC game King of the Castle, which I described to Magellan before the call as Jackbox Party Pack meets like a Kingmaker board game. It is played by a primary player on their PC and a bunch of character people on their phones or other devices, making decisions as different factions in a big like medieval setting with different stats, and it's all about decision making and fucking each other over in different win conditions and talking through your voting and giving each other money for things. It is super fun and really accessible. It seemed intimidating at first, but within 10 minutes we were all like yelling at each other and having a great time. That's King of the Castle, which is on Steam. It's so cheap too. It's $5 guys. Like, come on. And my second chatsum, and I feel like I shouldn't have to recommend this one, but I am. If you haven't seen Arrival yet from 2016, I am like 8 years late to the party.
Yeah, that movie's awesome.
It's really good. It made me choke up a little bit at the end. And I know I'm a big crybaby, but like that's a beautiful love story right there. Couched in a like really beautiful sci-fi story with like realistic study of linguistics, somewhat I think realistic. And I wish I saw this movie sooner because damn, it's a blast. Don't look up too much about it. Don't read about the storyline or what happens in it. Just watch the dang movie. It's Arrival. It's on I watched it on like some ad supported platform on my parents' TV. It was like not Tubi, but something like Tubi with ads. And it was really annoying watching a movie with ads. So maybe just rent Arrival on like Amazon if you have the chance. That's what I got. Magellan, please give the kids our collective chatsum this week.
I mean, come on.
Come on.
Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is a fucking amazing game. It's so good. It's such a good game. This is how I would describe it. This is what I said to Alan earlier. I won't say much about it. It's a very similar, well, I can't even say that. Breath of the Wild is a game. If you have not played it, I would not recommend playing this before Breath of the Wild, because a lot of what's cool about it is the way that it builds upon, expands upon, and deepens the things in Breath of the Wild. And I'm saying all those things metaphorically, but also literally in terms of the game's map. It's building on it and deepening what it was in that map. So I would definitely not recommend someone play this before Breath of the Wild, but I also don't know if anybody could play Breath of the Wild after this game, is kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if you like Breath of the Wild, this is gonna break your brain open. Yeah. I highly recommend it. Nintendo is somehow topping themselves and once again showing us that somehow it's them and like FromSoft are the only people who understand how to do an open world game that is good. And yeah. So it's really good.
The comparisons to Elden Ring are there, like they're ever present. It's just like like you said, the depth of it, the heights of it. It's a game. It's just fun. Like basically, they made another Breath of the Wild, but they deepened and fleshed out all of the systems to make them more flexible and to allow you to approach problems with more solutions. They didn't make it harder.
They did
or
a
easier.
Minecraft. They somehow made Zelda a Minecraft.
Yeah, Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts, Minecraft, Elden Ring, Zelda. Put that all into a stew, and somehow you get this like incredibly cohesive, incredibly fun to fuck around in world that is Tears of the Kingdom. We're both having a great time with it. It's the best game of the year I've played so far. And I dab on him right there. And Link's really cute. Okay. His long hair looks great.
He's got nice long hair. Yeah.
Well, that's what we have, Magellan. Thank you so much for being the Ron Funches to my Danny Putty, because we're both men surrounded by incompetence. So snobby. Let me just dial that back, because we're both people surrounded by other people. Sure, close enough. Friends surrounded by other people. And thank you guys all so very much for listening to this episode of Powerless, where we are powering off.
Oh, that was good.
Thanks, man.